Hi, it's Dwyer. It's February 11th, 2025. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. You know what? Believe it or not, the heavyweight title fight that's coming up. Daniel DuBois off a great performance where he knocks down AJ several times. That's after a great performance where he gives Filip Hrgovic, a guy I call the heir apparent, his first loss. Right? That young champion, a guy in his 20s in a division dominated by people in their 30s. He's mispriced. Folks, I know it sounds crazy to look at a young champion coming off a dominant performance and saying that he shouldn't even be the favorite in his upcoming fight. I don't believe he should be. Joseph Parker right now, believe it or not, is a plus 200. That's with a draw not counting. In other words, if this fight's controversial, if we go the full 12 rounds and they call the fight a draw, believe it or not, you don't lose anything. I'm the bet prop I'm talking about. If Parker wins, well, you win 2-1. Bet $1, get that dollar back, get $2 from the casino. In a fight where I feel Parker is likely to win. This is a casino mispricing. It's not for the timid. Just understand, Daniel DuBois has not fought anything close to the level of opposition that Joseph Parker has fought. Right? Parker recently beat Deontay Wilder, a 5-year heavyweight champion. He also beat Zhilei Zhang, who I feel is a real threat to the throne. Right? In my mind, that Zhilei Zhang Filip Hrgovic fight is one of the biggest fights in the heavyweight division over the last few years. Now, let's talk about the problems with DuBois. Let's talk about why Parker, in my opinion, is going to take the title. Right? Again, the hedge is DuBois by stoppage. In other words, I'm expecting the challenger to box the socks off Daniel DuBois so that if this fight goes to a decision, DuBois, the reigning champion, loses his belt in the decision. Right? Let me also point out that if you don't take the prop I'm talking about, the plus 200, where if it's a draw, you don't lose anything. Right? And I'm going to put the odds checker odds, a link to them, in the comment section of this video so you can look up that prop yourself and who's offering it. Right? But understand, if you don't take that prop, believe it or not, you can get a plus 225 right now on Joseph Parker. Right? Parker's the older fighter. Both of these guys lost to Joe Joyce. Right? This is really the Joe Joyce fight, believe it or not. Think it through. Right? Joyce gave DuBois his first loss. I've never seen Parker look as bad as he did against Joe Joyce. You should also know that Dillian White, who fought both of them, is picking Daniel DuBois. You should further know that Anthony Joshua, who fought both of them, is picking Joseph Parker. Right? Just be aware that there's a difference of opinion out there. Just be aware that the casino right now is siding heavily with the reigning heavyweight champion. Here's why I don't think Daniel DuBois wins the fight. I saw DuBois have jab problems, have a problem getting hit by a jab, not with his jab, but getting hit by a jab, right, with Joe Joyce. He didn't know his way around the jab. Okay, fine. We'll give him one fight where a guy with a jab subdues him. Then I'm watching the Usyk fight, and I'll concede here readily. Usyk's a southpaw, so it's a little bit different angle. But DuBois is getting hit with a jab there too. And as I make this video, I'm not sure what DuBois' game plan was in that fight. So let's just say DuBois has shown up to some fights, and he's looked baffled in the early rounds. Who could fight Joe Joyce and not be aware that Joe Joyce has a jab? I thought Joe Parker was more prepared for Joe Joyce's jab, right? Parker got hit with some sledgehammer right hands, right? But Parker seemed more prepared for the jab than Daniel Dubois did, right? Let me also point out too, and it's disheartening, I think the ref cost Dubois the heavyweight title in the Usyk fight. I understand my own subscribers disagree with me. Many of you do. Okay, fair enough. But what I didn't like was when Usyk, after being given an inordinate amount of time to recover from a questionable low blow, right, when Usyk got back up, let's just say Dubois didn't look hungry. He didn't look like I would expect a Nigel Benn to look. He didn't look like I would expect a Marvin Hagler to look. He didn't exactly remind me of Joe Frazier. In other words, these are guys who, if they feel the ref has made a mistake, and if they have just knocked you down, they would be on you. Right? Your chances of leaving the ring with the belt would depend on your ability to get through a firefight. Now I see Usyk get off the canvas. Here is Dubois. He's centimeters away from the heavyweight championship. He's centimeters away from beating a guy who has never lost professionally. You would think he would have said, okay, look, even though this brother was on the canvas for several minutes, he knows the punch was legit. I know the punch was legit. Hell, even if the punch wasn't legit, I know the guy's hurt. Right? I'm going to make sure this guy stays hurt. That wasn't the Dubois mindset. So we get to a controversial fight. I was wrong on this fight. It surprised me. I was expecting Ergovic to beat Dubois. But here is Ergovic against Dubois. And folks, understand, Dubois doesn't come across the ring like Joe Frazier against Ali, right? Dubois isn't of the mindset of, hey, it's him or me, and it's not going to be me, right? I have a punch, you know what? I'm going to show this guy that punch early. I want this guy to know that I own the pocket. He's going to have to beat me on his back foot. That was not Dubois in the first round. Don't let the outcome cause amnesia here. Dubois comes out and he's sluggish. Right? Dubois comes out and Ergovic is the aggressive person. It's Ergovic who's landing several flush right hands. Now Dubois is the bear, right? He's the guy who, if you poke him, right, he's going to come alive. I shouldn't say the bear. That's what Ali called Liston, right? Liston's actually a guy who stopped Floyd Patterson twice in the first round, right? That's not Dubois. Dubois, even in some fights where he gets an early stoppage, the Kevin Lorena fight I like to talk about, he came out looking befuddled in that fight. Right? Dubois is the guy who comes out befuddled, but if he feels you're bullying him, if you're not cool and surgical on the outside like Joe Joyce was, hitting him with a jab, if you actually come in and you're throwing right hands like Ergovic did, then Dubois gets angry, then he fights back. So the Ergovic fight, Dubois is getting rained on. It's only because DuBois is young and has a chin in some fights, right? Lorena knocks him down multiple times. But it's only because DuBois took Ergovic's punch that we're even here, talking about DuBois as champion. Let me say, too, the Anthony Joshua fight is a bit of an illusion, right? DuBois, heavy-handed guy, offensively blessed. I'm not going to say different, right? But just understand, he came out and he landed on Joshua early, right? I give him credit for that. But let's just say Anthony Joshua in that fight, because he gets hit early, wasn't Anthony Joshua, right? The Joseph Parker-Joshua fight is actually a 12-round chess match, right? Parker wants to get inside on Joshua. That's unbeaten Joshua. Joshua is sticking a jab in his face. The ref won't let Parker roughhouse. That's the level of courage Parker has, right? He's fighting a big puncher guy and Parker's in there ready to wrestle. Right, that fight goes on for 12 rounds. You have two guys looking at each other, figuring out angles. You learn much more looking at that fight. Then you do a fight where one guy comes out, throws some heavy leather, lands early, and the other guy never fully recovers. Right, so now we get Parker in his 30s. Against DuBois in his 20s, let's ask some basic questions. You saw DuBois getting hit with several right hands from Filip Ergovic. Several. Please, take a look at that tape. That tape is a point of reference. How do you know, or do you know, that DuBois has tightened up his defense? How? Right, folks? The Ergovic fight becomes a shootout. DuBois hits harder than Ergovic. DuBois starts landing shots. Ergovic should have been more attentive defensively. Just understand, Ergovic's tired by the 5th round because he's landed so much heavy leather on DuBois, who's gone nowhere. Right, folks? That's a shootout, right? DuBois doesn't win that fight because he's bobbing and weaving. He's making Ergovic miss. His defense is catching the shots. No, that's not the fight I saw. I saw a fight where he's getting hit repeatedly. But of course, he hits harder than the other guy. Right, so he fires back. Starts cutting up Ergovic's face. The ref has seen enough. It's a bad visual. Right, the Joshua fight, let's face it. Joshua comes in, he gets caught. He's, Joshua's not defensively blessed. So where is Joshua against DuBois? He's over by the ropes. Right, he, gets hit. He falls. You could tell the way Joshua fell that he was badly hurt. None of the knockdowns looked like a flash knockdown. Then you have the coup de grace. Joshua looks to me like he turns his ankle. In other words, Joshua reaches a point in that fight where he couldn't even move away from Daniel DuBois. Now, I'm not saying DuBois didn't win that fight, right? DuBois is the champ because he fought and beat Ergovic and Joshua, right? I'm not saying anyone gave him any favors or anything like that. He won those 2 fights. But now he's fighting a pro. Now he's fighting a scientist, a technician. Right? Understand, this is a guy who fought Andy Ruiz. Now, granted, that's a close fight. I believe if that fight were in Vegas or in California, Andy Ruiz wins that fight. The fight was in New Zealand, right? But importantly, in that fight, Joseph Parker's on his back foot the majority of the fight. Well, what I want people to do is to look at the Hughie Fury fight. Fury has great feet. Fury has great feints. He just doesn't have any power. Right? Joseph Parker's on his front foot that fight. Same fighter. Right? You would have thought he was Terrence Crawford. You're looking at the Hughie Fury fight and you're thinking to yourself, wow, is this Joseph Parker? Haven't I seen this guy before? Why does the guy on my TV look different tonight? Same fighter. Right? Understand, Joseph Parker's plan A was to get inside on Anthony Joshua. Ref wouldn't let him. So then Parker's outside. Joshua has a pretty good jab. Joshua's throwing the jab against Parker. Parker is dodging the jab. Right? Parker fights Zhilei Zhang. Parker gets knocked down twice. This is a tougher fight than the Deontay Wilder fight. So here is Parker in front of, perhaps, we'll find out in time, but perhaps the hardest puncher in the heavyweight division. Right? Here's Parker knocked down multiple times. What does Parker do? Parker wins the fight. He outboxes Zhilei Zhang. Parker does so with a lot of foot movement. Right? In my opinion, Parker right now is at the top of his game. And he has a great opportunity here. Because he's fighting a young guy who is not defensively blessed. He's fighting a young guy who at times seems to daydream during fights. Let me point out the Jarrell Miller fight. Right? You know what? Give the matchmaker for that fight a gold medal. Right? Whoever agreed to that fight in the DuBois camp. Because understand, Jarrell Miller, who has a lot of skills, right? He looked great in the recent Andy Ruiz fight, right? I'm not saying Jarrell Miller isn't skilled, but you understand Jarrell Miller is going to be front foot, don't you? Right? You see Jarrell Miller roaming around the ring. You don't even have to go find him. You just have to wait 10 seconds. He's going to be back in the pocket, isn't he? Right? Jarrell Miller keeps coming in the pocket against a blessed puncher, Daniel DuBois. Daniel DuBois wins that fight. It took DuBois several rounds to get that stoppage, didn't it? Right? Joe Parker is trickier than Jarrell Miller. Right? This is the KG vet who can be back foot. Andy Ruiz fight. Can be front foot. Hughie Fury fight. Can hover. AJ fight. Deontay Wilder fight. Zhilei Zhang fight. This is a guy who can face a guy with ring coverage. Right? Deontay Wilder, I personally believe there are a lot of Wilder opponents who look at Wilder and say, this brother is too far away to hit me. What? Guy's down. Right? Zhilei Zhang, folks. This is the consummate card player. No one believes me. I believe Zhang's right hand, Zhang's a southpaw, is as strong as his left hand. Right? I believe Zhang is deliberately low volume because he knows if he becomes too high volume, he's going to start suffering some stamina problems. So this is the guy, figuratively speaking, who's pulling the punch. Now against complicated fighters like a Zhilei Zhang, Joseph Parker has survived and won. Let me say this too. And Dillian White should know this. if there were 30 more seconds in the Dillian Whyte-Joseph Parker fight, White would have lost that fight. Look at the end of that fight. Just look at the 12th round of Joseph Parker against Dillian Whyte. Right? Have you, outside of White against Povetkin and outside of White against AJ, have you ever seen White as spent as he was at the end of the Joseph Parker fight? Right? So understand, Daniel Dubois, if he lands right, can knock out anyone. Right? You need this hedge. But all Daniel Dubois has in this fight, in my opinion, is a puncher's chance. If a boxing match breaks out, and that's what happened when Joe Parker fought Deontay Wilder. That's what happened when Joe Parker fought Zhilei Zhang. Right? If a boxing match breaks out, I think Joe Parker wins this fight by a few rounds. Right now, because this is boxing, because one judge, and there's always that judge you don't understand, because one judge curiously had Derek Chisora only winning his fight by a couple points, his fight against Otto Wallin, right? Because this is boxing, and because Dubois is a young champ, there's a lot of excitement about him. Right? Parker's been a champ before. But Parker's viewed as part of the old guard. Dubois is the more singular guy, right? There aren't a lot of guys in their 20s who are shining brightly, who actually have recently had a share of the heavyweight title. Your assumption should be that one judge is going to disagree with the fight you saw. Right? Just in case he has company. Just in case there's a second judge who is starstruck. Joe Parker is from New Zealand. Dubois is fighting at home. You know, just in case there's a starstruck other judge. Just understand the casinos are giving you a bet where if it's a draw, you lose no money. If Parker wins the fight, you're getting plus 200 odds. Right? Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. If they're offering you cheap insurance, take the insurance. What's the worst that can happen to you if you win the bet? Someone's talking to you and you say, yeah, I got a plus 200. Person can say, plus 200? You know, how did you know the challenger was going to win this fight, right? That's, you know, there are many fights where you don't get a plus 200. And of course, if you're watching the judges' cards and they mention the judge who is out there and they say, this judge has Dubois winning, then the announcers are all surprised and stuff. Then they say the second judge has Parker winning. Then the third judge, they say 114, or whatever it is. You know, you're sitting there and you're saying, man, they ripped me off, but at least I'm keeping the money. Right? At least I'm getting back what I bet on this fight. I think that's a risk worth taking. The hedge is Dubois by stoppage, but I need for everyone to understand the risk involved, and it's substantial. If Dubois wins by decision, if you have a fight where, kind of like Chris Billum-Smith, Lawrence Okoli, Dubois lands several times and Joe Parker goes down multiple times, like he did in the Zhilei Zhang fight. And if Parker, who's a vet, is somehow able, through experience and cunning, to go the distance, as he did against Deontay Wilder and Zhilei Zhang, under those circumstances where Dubois gets knockdowns, where Dubois is getting 10-8 rounds, Dubois could win a decision, especially if the knockdowns happen early and the judges get predisposed to bet on the young champion. To sum up, I think the greater than plus 200 underdog, right? He's a plus 225. With the draw prop, he's a plus 200. I believe Joseph Parker is the next heavyweight champion. I think he takes DuBois' title. The hedge is DuBois by stoppage. That's how I see it. I believe this price is mispriced. Understand, folks, we just had a Super Bowl where the Kansas City Chiefs were favored, and you understood by halftime that they had lost their title. Casinos make mistakes. I believe this is a casino mistake. I like Parker simply to win, hedged with DuBois by stoppage. Let me hear from you. I know there's some Dillian Whites out there. Obviously, there are some gamblers who have, bet heavily on DuBois. Hence, you have the casino prices. If you're on that side of the aisle, tell us why in the comment section of this YouTube video. Right, to sum up, I believe DuBois is not quite ready defensively for this level of cagey fighter. Right? If DuBois comes out, lands early, like he did against AJ, and Joseph Parker can't recover, gets stopped, falls down multiple times, gets stopped like Joe Frazier, who I consider to be a great champion, got stopped by George Foreman. Right? If that happens, you're okay. As long as the fight doesn't go 12 rounds. Right? If the fight goes 12 rounds and DuBois wins the fight, you lose it all. That's the risk we're taking. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by. Let me also say, too, just as an aside, there are a bunch of casino mispricings out there, I believe, this year. Right? We'll talk about them in future videos. My subscribers, my paid subscribers, can rest assured you'll get a lot of those fights. Thanks for stopping by.